Hi everyone, it's lovely to be here. I know we've got parents from a number of kinders around Melbourne and childcare and family daycare, so it's lovely to have you all here this morning, and thank you so much for the invitation to be here this morning. You've probably noticed that when you get up in the morning, your children are not that inclined to rush up and say, hey, you're doing a very good job in your parenting role. You notice that they tend to not really acknowledge the greatness of who you are, and yet we know through so many studies that your role as a parent is one of the most significant of all the roles there could ever be. And I thought we should start the morning by you turning to the person next to you and saying, good on you for being a parent. So please do that. Give them a pat on the back and say good on you. It is sometimes a bit of a lonely role being a parent, if you noticed, and a bit of a challenge, but hopefully it also, of course, has all those joys associated. We also know more than we ever did before that you are the expert on your child, not the early childhood people. We have a lot of expertise, but we really know that you know your child better than anyone else. And so to have you involved so closely and so directly on committees, advisory groups, is really what research over the last 10 years or more has really highlighted that is so significant in that partnership between families and professional groups, committees of management, cluster management groups, and I'm so pleased that you have been able to find the time and the inclination to be part of your children's education. The Greek philosopher Plato is attributed, we attribute to him this wonderful quote that is one of my favourites. The beginning of something is always the most important, especially when it's young and needs time to grow. And it's often a great thing to be thinking about. You're beginning this journey of being involved in a committee level. Your children are at the very beginning of the lifespan. And it is the most important. We do find across the world the early childhood years being birth to 8. And we know that these are the formative years. We know that early influence, the study of the brain highlights the significant patterning, the influence of what's going on in your children's lives. We know that if we can get it as right as possible in particular areas that I want to touch on this morning, we're going to probably avoid many of the mishaps and unfortunate issues that are facing many young people as they move through into their teenage and young adult years. So this partnership between you, between us in early childhood and management and committees is extremely important and very serious. We know that your influence and your impact as a parent and in the family, and that collaboration between your knowledge of your child, your input, your voice, your wisdom as to what children are needing in sentence, in kinders, in childcare, is extremely important. I think it's a wonderful time to have a child in an early childhood program right now. I think we do know more than we ever did. I don't know whether you're aware or you remember from your own childhood when we used to lock families out. We used to open the door, wave you goodbye to parents and just drag the children in, often kicking and screaming. So much has changed in the last 10 to 20 years where we know to embrace the family and the child, things are going to travel much better for children on that journey. It's interesting when we actually look at research and use evidence in what is so critical. What will your impact at a committee level, an advisory group level, what will we be drawing upon? What will your input be doing? And why is it so important, even like a morning this morning, to take you away from your family at such a busy time of year, the significance of your role, that it is so much more than what is my role on a committee, but really much more what is my role in shaping future generations of children, educational settings, because in a sense we have serious business to do. I'm so often asked now to speak to parents of young children aged 9, 10, 11 and 12 who really are desperate, these parents, to know things like this. How can I get my child off Facebook? How can I get my child off texting? How can I stop my child locking themselves away in their bedrooms in front of a computer, an Xbox, a PlayStation? We have big challenges in Australia now that unless we start readdressing, seriously rethinking how society and childhood works in these early years, we are really actually in some trouble. Scratch the surface of Australian society, and what do we note right now? This is my sad bit of the talk, and then I'll get happy again. And I'm really sorry to raise this on a morning like this, but I think it's significant for you, for all of us working in collaboration together, because it's not just about what does being on a committee mean, it's what does my contribution to childhood and society mean. We have one of the highest suicide rates in the Western world, particularly for young children, 15 and onwards, particularly for our young men. What is that self-harm? What is going on for young men in today's society? We have one of the world's highest binge drinking rates and drug and substance abuse. We have a terrible track record on mental ill health. We have an enormous amount of drink driving and an increasing anxiety rate in children at a younger and younger age. These issues are complex, but they touch the lives of families, they touch the lives of society, and it is for us as a society, as a community of parents and educators and others within the community working together to address in the early years what can we do to strengthen one's sense of self, to help a child become more resilient, to give them and empower them the skills that will help them to say, no, I don't need that ice, no, I won't get in the car, you've been drinking too much. No, I don't need to take those things to make me feel good, because I already have that sense of strength of myself, my own sense of identity and well-being. We have in early childhood the most wonderful set of principles and framework now that actually highlights that one of the things we're aiming for now is one's sense of well-being, one's sense of one's place in the community and society. And that's for you as parents on committees, that will be kind of your overarching thing. How do we build that capacity for young children? And when I was an academic, we used to research and ask parents, what is it you want most for your children in their life? And we can do a little quick, you could be like a focus group that we used to have. We used to ask parents, what are the top 3 things that come to your mind instantly that you want for your children as they grow up? Have a quick chat with each other. What are the top 3 things that come to your mind?
This is
all right. Let's see whether you're the bell curve average research group.
No one wants to say no, that's no.
Who had, I want my child to be happy?
That was
See? Very average. Good. Who had, I want my child to be healthy? Very good. Now this is the third one, is where we always have some difference, but we almost come back together again when we've unpacked it. Who had a word in some measure or other like success? Success often is the third, but it has to be unpacked, because what is success? How do you measure success. It often, I guess, relates back to families' values or society's, social media, popular culture's interpretation of success. Is it being a movie star? Is it driving a particular car? Is it earning a particular amount of money? Is it a particular career? How does one measure success? Now here you are volunteering your good time to be part of building the capacity of children's education and well-being. So part of that is, what are you going to measure success for children? I've got some help here for you, because international researchers, social scientists, psychologists, educators have attempted to say what might be the measures of success for a child growing up in society today. And on the top of their list is self-concept. Someone that feels essentially okay about themselves. Second on the list is resilience. Not always having to feel brave, but feeling and developing the skills of bouncing back, having another go, persistence, perseverance. I can have a try. Damn, that was too hard, but that doesn't mean I'm a failure. I can try again. Third on the list is healthy relationships throughout a life. Friendships, collegial, family, partnerships, non-abusive, no put-downs, that I am able to seek out and sustain healthy relationships through my life. Fourth on the list is to be able to effectively communicate, to be able to express my feelings, my needs, to articulate. And this one is particularly pertinent, I think, because right now we have young people who are not able to express, I'm hurting, I'm scared, I'm confused. And this is a very big one for Australian society. How do we, as parents, as cluster managers, as committee members, how do we help in early childhood programs promote that sense of being able to say it as it is? You see, Australian culture generically has always said to little children, particularly to little boys, oh, come on, be brave. You'll be all right. Pick yourself up. Give me a smile. Get on with it. Don't make him a mummy's boy. Boys don't cry. That's not effective communication. That's not a healthy sense of expression. So when you are 15 and you are struggling, or you are 21 and you don't get into your university course, or you are struggling and your first 15 to 20 years of life with the people that you adore and have been most significantly influenced by, your parents, your teachers, have said all your life, come on, you'll be all right, give me a smile, pick yourself up, don't be scared, that's a sissy thing to do. Why would you suddenly start reaching out? Why would you have the skills to say, well, actually, I'm hurting? So effective communication is extremely important here in Australia to undo that cultural thing about the big macho man. That it is okay to say I'm needy. That it is okay to say I need support. I'm actually hurting. And that's, as we often talk about in resilience talks, that is actually how you build a resilient community and a resilient human being. These are the sorts of things that being in a management service, being part of an early childhood program at a committee executive level provides you with this opportunity, not just the logistical parts of roles and regulations, but it really puts you in this empowering position to have a voice about shaping the lives of children. And it's a wonderful privilege that we have, that you are volunteering your time to really contribute to shaping and reshaping the future generations of children. Because we must turn these terrible statistics around. And it requires a different language, different skill set, different thinking, which means a different way of being in early childhood, in the early childhood years, because once you get to about 8, you have to unlearn and relearn all over again. It gets harder. And so getting it right in these early childhood years is extremely critical. And that partnership that you are now volunteering your time to be part of is wonderful, because it is mostly parents that make the difference. I was listening to a keynote speaker at a conference the other day who brought up this great big pie chart, and he said, let me show you how much influence early childhood and schools have and how much influence parents have. And he'd done all this longitudinal research over in the United States, and everyone gasped, because even though we kind of think, well, you know, school and early childhood as they get older has this huge impact, and of course parents still do, school and early childhood has 20%, parents have 80%, until the age of 12. So your input, your knowledge, your contribution, sometimes some of those committee meetings might seem mighty boring and tedious, but your contribution is profound. Now that 20% that you're contributing to, don't underestimate the power of that 20%, because we need that 20% with your 80% to make sure that every percent of that 20% is high quality. And that's very important. Because I used to say to my uni students as they finished their 4th year and they're about to go and teach and work in early childhood and primary years, that every single day a child has in an early childhood or classroom, they'll never have that day again. So we need to make sure that you, working with cluster management, working with educators and your expertise, we are all collectively making sure every single child, every single day is getting the best service. And I think we're doing that pretty well in Victoria. We have government support. We have that recognition at state government level that to bring clusters of centres together to support with shared collective professional learning. I know that ECMS is very committed to teacher education. I know myself, I don't know how many times I was out at night working for you guys during the year on parent support. Topics of behaviour, resilience, readiness for school, a whole range of things to support parents in their parenting. So I think it's a really great initiative. I think it's fantastic that you've got today. And I'd like to wish you well in the work that you do this morning and through next year. And really just to highlight that whilst some people whinge and moan and, oh, I've got a committee meeting and, oh, it's this and that, it is actually a profound opportunity to shape the future lives of new generations. And it's a really great time to have a child in education. Schools are much better than they used to be. Early childhood programs are really of high quality. We've got a fantastic quality framework that's doing wonderful things across the whole of Australia, which has united us. And cluster management programs such as run by ECMS, which you are now part of, is really, really aiming high, not just for the programs themselves, but that bigger picture of childhood and society. So I'd like to wish you well for the morning, but more importantly for your parenting, for your work on the committees next year and the advisory groups. And most particularly, I'd like to wish you well with your children's education and lives. I hope they are happy, healthy and successful ones, however you define that. And I'd like to thank ECMS for the invitation to open your day and to speak to you for a few minutes this morning. So thank you and all the best.
Thank you, Kathy. It's a privilege to have you here this morning and really just sort of, I guess, centre essentially what we're all here about, and to remind us around the importance of that role and the opportunity we have to shape some really important lives and futures. So I thought it'd be interesting now we've got some of your expertise expertise and background and knowledge to just open up for a couple of questions, I guess, that people might have. Just to cut into the agenda a bit and create an opportunity for people who might want to explore that particular issue a bit further.
Sure.
Any questions that people have?
I'd like to open one up. We had a discussion amongst ourselves about parenting in this day and age, and how I think parenting now has become a lot softer, and we're a lot softer on the children. An example of that is a race. You have first, second and third, but we're giving out awards for 8th, 9th and 10th.
I agree with you. I think it's ridiculous, and if you don't mind me saying.
No, absolutely.
Look, have I got a minute?
Go for it.
How do we, encompass that as a community and, get the kids to understand and learn that there's nothing wrong with 8th, 9th and 10th. You have to try harder.
I agree. When I am asked to give talks on resilience, I give a couple of examples, and one of them is exactly that. Children, when they're old enough to compete, need to learn that I'm old enough to understand I've done my best. And sometimes my best is fantastic because I win or I get a place and I'm recognised for that. And sometimes I try my best but I miss out on that place. And that's what we call the ordinary everyday life experience of building resilience. Damn, I missed out. I often start my resilience talks with asking parents if they remember the original game of Pass the Parcel.
Yeah.
You remember the original game where there was one prize? Yeah. Now don't feel guilty if you play that game and every child gets a prize. But in fact, it's another example of how unintentionally, without any malice, without wanting to distort life, we have all been caught up in a tidal wave of trying to compensate, of trying to help our children never feel discomfort, and yet you see the reality is this, that one day your child might try to get into a university course and miss out on their first choice. One day they might want to get a particular result in something and just miss out. One day they might find themselves in the playground and for one lunchtime they might be on the outer. This is life. And one of the things I write about and I talk about is that inadvertently we are at the moment we're talking about it, people like me write about it, I'm asked to speak about it, so resilience is high on our agenda, which is wonderful, but the complete paradox is that we're living a non-resilient life. In Sydney, anyone here from Sydney? Good. In Sydney, when I give these talks, they always say to me, oh, but what about compensation birthday gifts? And I say, what are they? And they say, oh, well, when one of our children has a birthday, we give all the other children in the family a birthday gift so they don't feel left out. Now, I totally agree, and when we run our parenting courses and our parent talks at our foundation, we're always saying, you need to reflect and allow children to feel how they feel. We comfort, of course, when they're upset, but we must not overcompensate. Otherwise, the next generation of children are never going to be able to look after themselves. The greatest gift we can give our young children is to build that capacity to believe that they can cope with life and to know how to reach out when it's appropriate. So I totally agree with you. Yeah, good comments.
Thank you. Any other questions?
I would ask you about sort of building resilience in kids who don't naturally tend to be shy.
Yeah.
Because, one of my kids tends to get out on the myself. But also we just had sort of round of Christmas concerts and things over this last week at Kinder in all the classes, and the Kinder teachers try, different approaches with the kids, and they've all found this year sort of nothing really seemed to work. From one end saying to them, look, just get on and do it, this is what we're doing. Everyone get up there and everyone does it. This is what we do at Kinder. To, the other end of saying, it's okay if you don't want to, and you want mum to stand there and hold your hand, and, I just don't know what the best way is.
Yeah. So there's a couple of general comments I'll make. One is that each of us, of course, have our own personality, and some children are more what we call slow to warm up. Slow to warm up children, particularly under the age of 5 or 6, often find it difficult, don't they? Some of them get a bit phased when the photographer comes to take the Kinder photos. Some of them are a bit scared when the animal farm comes, or an incursion or an excursion, and sometimes you take your child to a party and they're the one that's kind of standing next to you instead of rushing off. I actually, I don't relate that to resilience, because sometimes these quieter children, these children that take a little bit more time, are actually in their own time have quite a bit of stamina. And it doesn't necessarily equate that your personality won't be resilient, it's just that you take longer to get used to things. So my own view on the kinder concert, if there is one, performance, is that when they're that young, I'm not that fussed if they don't join in. When they get to school and there are expectations and they might need to stand up and there's that speaking and listening thing and there's expectations, then gently, gently, slowly, slowly, and through a bit of the peer influence, these children who are a bit slower to warm up, we work with them because there are, aren't there, in life, there's expectations, and at some point we learn to adjust to them. In the preschool, kinder years, I would rather respect the fact that in terms of personality, some children are just not yet ready, they're just not, ready to perform. And I always differentiate performance for another when you're a kinder child as irrelevant. Why force a child who's just taking a little bit more time at that young age to perform to make another person feel good? I don't think it's worth it. That is because of the stage of maturity. But if we were to transport that child a few years hence, then I'd change my opinion and use different strategies because they're at a different stage of development. I'm not a great fan of Christmas concerts at kinder, you see, so I don't particularly want children having to perform for grandparents and whatever when they're so little. But as they get older and their brain matures and their emotions mature, then I'm much more, like you were saying, there are expectations, there's limits. But I'm not sure that, I sometimes feel that some of those kinder performances are a bit like a performance for the other, rather than helping children have that authentic sense of this is meaningful to me. But that's another hot talk.
Thanks again, Kathy. And as you were talking, I was remembering when I was running the 200 metres at Little Athletics, and I finished fourth, but I didn't get one of those colourful ribbons.
Did you need therapy?
I did actually. I'm not sure what it says about my resilience, but I think now I know I was just slow to warm up.
All right. Thanks.
Please join me again.